Welcome to Spotlight Sessions, where we shine a
What's
light
your
on
story?
incredible. What does accessibility mean to you?
What's your mission? Welcome all to accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions, where we shine a light on incredible individuals and organizations and the work that they do. I'm your host, Josh Basil. I'm a C4-5 quadriplegic, paralyzed below my shoulders, and a power wheelchair user. I'm the Community Relations Manager at accessiBe and a passionate disability rights advocate and trial attorney focused on breaking down barriers to access and inclusion for people with disabilities. Today on accessiBe Spotlight Sessions, we're joined by Chantal Bryan, a trustee with Teach Us Too. Welcome, Chantal.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you as our guest today. And you have an incredible story, and same thing with your son. So let's jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your son, Jonathan.
Thank you so much for inviting me today. So my son, Jonathan, was born as a result of a car accident, and he joined a special school aged 4, which for him meant that he wasn't taught to read and write at school. And when he was 7, someone suggested to me that I should give it a go. I should give him a go at trying to teach him to read and write. So with some expert guidance and advice, I took him out of school for a few hours a day. And after a year and a half, he'd learnt enough literacy to be able to start spelling what he wanted to say. So he uses this perspex board to spell, and he looks here and we look through here to see where he's looking. It was amazing age. So he was 9 when he started to spell out everything he wanted to say. And it just completely transformed our life and his life. And he came out of special school and he went to our local primary school. He really excelled academically, but it also really changed our life as a family. So he started talking about things like how he wanted us to get a dog, and there were some things that we knew already. There were some things that we had absolutely no idea about. He talked about a time when he'd been really, really ill, and he told us that he'd been to what he called Jesus's garden, and his body had worked perfectly, and how he'd run around and how he longed to go back. So we had this amazing experience, and a year and a half after he started to learn to read and write, he got really ill. And he got better. He was actually slightly annoyed that he got better, but he got better. And he said, maybe God's given me extra time to make a difference for children like me in education. So he set up a campaign initially asking the government to teach every child to read and write, regardless of the disability or the label that they had, because there are whole cohorts of children in this country who aren't taught to read and write, particularly the ones that end up with the label profound and multiple learning difficulties, which is the label he had. His campaign really took off. He got a lot of signatures on change.org. He took the message to the Minister for Special Educational Needs and Disabilities. And one of the things that minister said was, policies can change from the top, but there also needs to be a change from the bottom. There needs to be more education and more understanding of people who are doing this in schools. So a year and a half later, in 2018, he wrote a book, and he wanted his proceeds of the book to go towards a charity. And he wanted his charity to further the campaigns of the ideas of his campaign. And also to do some of this working from the bottom up, talk to university students who are going to become teachers, and talk to Senkos and start to change people's attitudes. So his charity was founded, Teach Us Too. I am one of the trustees along with my husband and his teacher called Sarah. So the 4 of us run the charity, and we go around, we thanks to Zoom, we can go pretty much anywhere now. So we talk to university students, particularly those trained to be teachers, and other professionals, and we often do that on Zoom. So we have a training video and then we have a live Q&A. We also sponsor training for teachers and professionals so that they can learn how to teach children, particularly this cohort with PMLD, how to start teaching them to read and write in the classroom. We sponsor those, we don't put them on ourselves, so we get experts in the field to deliver that training. And we've had a huge impact. We've had lots and lots of teachers come representing lots of different schools, and we're starting to see a shift change in what's happening.
And so with Jonathan, with being nonverbal
Mm-hmm.
and being able to, like, was there a moment like when you first kind of recognized like his first word that he was able to spell out, and you're like, oh my God, we're on to something? You're like, tell us about kind of the beginnings of figuring out how he was able to spell and communicate through the board.
So I'd been teaching him literacy for a year and a half, and we'd done all the initial sort of sounds, and he could recognize words. So he was reading words, and then we were giving him whole words to choose from. I devised a really complicated way for him to do some independent writing, which involved him choosing whole words that we'd already picked out. So he had some choice, but we were sort of pre-choosing the kind of thing he might like to say. And he was writing a story one day, and he just kept looking at the spelling. We had a little sign that said spelling board, like, I'd like to spell this word. And midway through the story, he just started spelling, and then he spelt out everything he wanted to write in this story. And about 2 sentences in, he spelt the word myriads, which wasn't one of the words we've been giving him. We were just completely blown away. Like, how's he come out with that? But I've always read to him, so he's always been exposed to a lot of literature. To my shame, it did take me about another 24 hours to realise that, because he was spelling out everything he wanted to write in a story, we could also maybe have a conversation. So it was an interesting way round, and I sometimes think about how he was so motivated to write. Writing is his passion, and it was so frustrating. It was annoying, I think, for him to be given words that we were suggesting, because they obviously weren't the things that he actually really wanted to write. And it was that really started his voice. And I assumed when we sat down and said, tell us stuff, that he would just come out with loads of stuff. But actually, he kind of waited for us to ask him questions. It was a bit strange. That first conversation was really, and it was really difficult on the spot to think of things to ask him. Like, for 9 years, we kind of knew the kind of things he liked, and he smiled. He was able to smile when for a yes. So we had an idea about the kind of things that he wanted. But actually, suddenly being able to ask him anything, it was like, whoa.
It's a whole different world. And Jonathan's book, I Can Write, and it's EYE.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is incredible. And I just, it's always been a dream of mine to write a book. But the fact that Jonathan wrote a book in the way that he is able to do it and be able to get out those words, the story, and everything, it's powerful. Nothing. If there's a will, there's a way, and that's the beautiful thing about Jonathan, you, and everything that you're doing together to show the world of anything is possible with the right approach, a little creativity, and being able to put yourself out there. So I applaud what you do, and I would love to ask, what is a memorable moment or story with Teach Us To that's kind of had a lasting impact on you?
Quite soon after we set up the charity, we had a training. It was actually pre-COVID, so it was in-person training in Bristol. And I met a lady who'd come all the way from the north of England down to the south for this training. And she had read Jonathan's book. She'd heard about Teach Us To as a charity. And she just started teaching a whole class of PMLD students. And she just thought, well, what is there to lose? I'm going to try and teach them to read and write and see what happens. And her story really, I just found it amazing that she got hold of it. She took the initiative. She didn't always have support from everyone in her school for what she was doing. There were people who'd known the children for a long time who just didn't think that they'd be capable of doing what she was asking of them. And she found after a year that every single one of those children did not fit the label of profound and multiple learning difficulties, that every single one of them was communicating and able to and they were all on a literacy journey, and they were all able to do so much more than they thought they could. And it obviously had a big effect for those children, but also for them as a class. So sadly, in the year that she was a teacher, they lost two pupils. Two pupils passed away, and because they were able to express themselves so much better, she was able to go to the senior management team and use their words and say, this is why they need some extra therapy to help them, get over this. And it was amazing to meet her, and quite early on in our Teach Us To journey. And you just think, yeah, this isn't about one boy. This is about a whole load of children who would really benefit from being taught to read and write.
That's awesome. And when you hear, what first comes to mind for you when you hear the word accessibility?
Accessibility. It's interesting. Jonathan's said things about this in the past, and he said it's about asking people, about asking what would work for you. So he's done he did a talk for a church organisation, and he said you can't assume that you know what someone's going to want without asking them. And I think sometimes some accessibility has got to a little bit of tick, tick, tick. And actually, it's about asking people what's going to help them, and not so much access things as actually be able to participate. This isn't just about letting people in through the door, by the back door often, and saying, okay, you're in now, but actually saying, what can we do so that you can actually participate and you can be fully part of this.
No, I love that. Yeah, being able to provide that inclusion on top of the accessibility allows you to have the better experiences, more opportunities, a chance to dance. It's just you're not only being let in, but you're also being welcomed, and you're able to participate, which is awesome. I love that. And what is one thing you wish people knew more about children that are nonverbal that they don't know about?
I think often people meet children who are nonverbal and just assume that because they can't talk, there's nothing going on in their heads. And actually, being nonverbal doesn't mean you're not understanding. It doesn't mean you don't have feelings. It just literally means you can't speak. And I think if people understood that, there'd be quite different attitudes. I do sometimes wonder whether a lot of the attitudes around children with PMLD and not teaching them to read and write is because they are nonverbal, and there are a whole load of assumptions around that make it difficult for people to see, actually, just because you can't speak doesn't mean you're not understanding. And on the back of that, Pete Jonathan has had people in the past, and actually still now has people who treat him like a pre-verbal toddler when they meet him because he doesn't speak. So they kind of say, "Hi, Josh, how are you? You're smiling, good." And you just think, even when I introduce him and say he's in sixth form, I have people still interact with him like this. And you just think, you wouldn't, if I brought Jonathan's 17-year-old strapping lad friends in, you would not talk to them like that.
That's such good points. And, it's sometimes you don't want to make people uncomfortable and call them out on the spot, but at the same time, it does provide a teaching moment of I
think it's difficult with members of the public. It's different, but we do have, I do experience this on Jonathan's behalf. For instance, for people in health, so people who are coming in a health capacity to meet Jonathan, and you think, really, you should know better.
Well, it's sometimes tough. A lot of the communication, I've been into businesses, and I'll be with my caregiver or my wife, and basically instead of them looking at me or addressing me, they'll look right over my shoulder. There's so many different instances that it kind of, because people don't maybe have enough touches with disability in their life, they don't know how to properly communicate or react or all those things. And it's just, the more we can talk about, the more we can share stories like the one you just did. It's a teaching moment for whether you're verbal, nonverbal, you name it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would love, my last question, I would love to ask, what's one thing more that we can do as a society or people to create a more inclusive place for all abilities?
I think it's about not just physical accessibility, but it's about learning, and it's about breaking down some of the barriers that people with disabilities face. And actually, the way to find out about them is to ask people like you and the disability community. Actually, what will help you feel like you are participating in this experience.
Chantal, thank you so much for being our guest today on accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions. Really enjoyed our conversations, and just thank you again.
Thank you. And anyone who's interested, that's Jonathan's book.
I can write. I love it. I love it. I love it. And for all of our guests, thank you so much for staying to the end of accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and follow us at accessiBe_community. And as always, thank you so much for being on this journey with us. Take care, everyone. Bye, Chantal.
Bye. Thank you.